what I want to say is three simple things. Number one, this race here in Texas is ground zero in the battle between the Tea Party revolution and the establishment. This is where the battle is being fought. You know what? The national media cannot wait to write the headlines the Tea Party is dead. They are itching. The stories are already written. This Texas Senate primary is going to be the first major Senate primary in the country. If we don't pull it off, the stories will come as sure as rain from the clouds. That 2010 was a fluke, it was an anomaly, and the Tea Party is a footnote of history. That's what the media wants to write. And if that happens, every strong conservative in the country will be hurt by that. That will be used to tell every insurgent candidate in the country, you can't win. Money and the establishment are back. Because, you know, the Senate's supposed to be a boys' club of people that all are fighting between the 48-yard lines, who are not fighting to change anything. That's what the Senate's supposed to be. But I'll tell you the flip side. When we win this race, it's going to be a cannon shot. Hoorah. Across the country. And it is going to impact and help every conservative insurgent candidate running for Senate in 2012. You know, right now, the four strongest conservatives in the U.S. Senate are Senator Jim DeMint, Senator Mike Lee, Senator Rand Paul, and Senator Pat Toomey. I'm incredibly honored and humbled to be the only candidate in the country who is supported by all four of them. And the reason's simple. Every one of them gave the exact same reason. They said, we need reinforcements. We're outnumbered. We're outnumbered by Democrats, and sadly, that small core of constitutional conservatives is outnumbered by fellow Republicans. I think one of the most critical questions in the entire country in 2012, regardless of what happens in the presidential race, we need to defeat Barack Obama.
That's right.
But whatever happens in the presidential race, the Senate's going to be the battlefield. And if we can grow that small core of 6 or 7 strong constitutional conservatives, if we can grow it to 10 or 12 or 15, we'll transform the Senate and we'll transform the nation. We're at a tipping point of a critical mass to drive a serious reform agenda, to dramatically shrink the size, power, and spending of the federal government, to repeal every word of every syllable of Obamacare. This race is ground zero. The second thing I want to say, the grassroots win elections. We're going to win this race because of the men and women in this room. At the end of the day, an election is about reaching out to the people. And a lot of people in Washington forget who they work for. It's a real problem where there's a permanent elite in both parties of career politicians that think they're philosopher kings, here to govern the rest of us. You know, as Barack Obama, when he had a brief moment of candor in San Francisco, observed while swilling Chardonnay, most Americans, in their view, are bitter and angry and clinging to God and their guns.
We are.
My response to that, exactly as yours, is damn straight. Welcome to Texas. You know, my main opponent in this race is the Lieutenant Governor, David Dewhurst. He's a perfectly nice, decent man. I like him personally. But do you know that he has skipped 20 candidate forums all over the state of Texas? He simply doesn't show up. He will not stand in front of the people. He won't go to Tea Party events. He won't go to Republican women events. You know, I got to tell you, I think if you're going to run for an office like U.S. Senate, you owe it to the voters to stand in front of them and answer their hard questions.
That's right.
That's right.
You know, a lot of politicians forget who they work for. The Constitution begins, we the people. And the extraordinary thing about our Constitution is we inverted. What the framers did is they inverted the understanding that had been true for millennia. For millennia, the understanding had been that rulers governed the people and gave rights like grace. The framers totally upended it, and they said sovereignty begins with the people. And we will create a Constitution, as Thomas Jefferson put it, that will serve as chains to bind the mischief of government. But sovereignty always remains with the people, and the rights, they don't come from government, they come from God. And government is put in place to protect our national interest and to do the things we need to do collectively. But our liberty is only safe if government is constrained. And there are far too many politicians that think the grassroots don't matter. They don't understand. You know, at the office, if your boss called you into his office and said, I need to talk to you, you wouldn't say, I'm too busy, sorry. I'm playing solitaire on the computer, I can't be bothered. You know, I think if a candidate skips 20 candidate forums, he's telling his boss he's too busy for that. We are building the strongest grassroots army the state of Texas has ever seen. The way we're going to win this race is because of the men and women in this room and all across the state. Every one of you has tens and hundreds and thousands of people that listen to you. The energy and passion that led the tidal wave of 2010 was millions of citizens across the country saying, we're not going to take business as usual. We're going to pick up the phone and call our friends. We're going to knock on the doors. We're going to send emails. We're going to talk to our family, to our neighbors, to our loved ones, to the person next to us in the checkout counter in the grocery store. And say, are you worried about where this country is going? Then do something about it. I need your help to win this race. And I am so honored and humbled that you've come together and that we are part of a fight to retake this state and retake this country. The third and final thing I want to say is our message is resonating powerfully. This race presents a very simple contrast between a timid career politician and a strong conservative fighter. In my opinion, there are two basic questions in this race. Will the next senator from the state of Texas be a strong conservative? And will the next senator from the state of Texas be a fighter? And you know, the nice thing is Texans are not on the fence when faced with that choice. You know, there have been 16 candidate forums since this race has started. We have beaten every major candidate in all 16 straw polls by an average margin of over 42 points. Now that's staggering. When primary voters hear our message, we don't beat David Dewhurst by 5 points or 10 points. It's by over 42 points. Because when Texans are faced with the question, do I want yet another establishment, moderate politician who is scared of his own shadow? Or do I want someone ready to stand up and fight? That ain't a hard question for Texans to answer. Particularly with what's happening in this nation. You know, Barack Obama is the most radical president this country's ever seen. And if we don't stand up and fight right now, we're going to lose our country. You know, y'all had the chance to listen to my dad before we got started. You can see why my dad has been my hero my whole life. He's also a pastor north of Dallas, and I was a little worried that if he had another 5 minutes, he was going to pass the election.
can still do that.
Actually, this is a campaign. That's not But you know, I learned from the age of 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 that if you don't stand up and fight for your liberty, you'll lose it. The great blessing of being the child of an immigrant who fled oppression is you understand that liberty can only be preserved if you stand up and fight for it. That it is precious and it's fragile. In the scope of human history, the condition we have right now in the United States of America is free men and women able to worship God and put our natural talents and energy and passion and work to provide for our family and our future. That has been the exception in the human experience. It is extraordinarily unusual in the entire scope of history. And it's not written in stone that the United States will remain the freest and most prosperous nation on earth. What it will take is all of us standing up to do it. And I will tell you, I am immensely optimistic. We are seeing a great awakening sweeping the country. And I'll tell you in this race, 2 closing points. Number 1, David Dewhurst has a ton of money. He is, technically speaking, a gazillionaire. But you know, we just announced our fundraising results yesterday. Our campaign has raised over $4 million in this race. We are almost exactly tied with David Dewhurst in fundraising. Now, that is absolutely nutty. He is the sitting lieutenant governor. Every lobbyist in the state of Texas has to write him a check. We're the insurgent grassroots campaign. We're not supposed to be tying the sitting lieutenant governor in fundraising. But you know, it's very interesting if you break down the numbers because it will tell you the strength of our campaign. The over $4 million we've raised has come from over 12,500 donors in over 600 Texas cities in all 50 states. David Dewhurst's money on his last FEC report came from a total of 823 donors. Our average contribution is $319. His average contribution is over $2,300. If you were bringing together an assemblage of professional lobbyists and special interest PACs, David Dewhurst would have won this race by acclamation. But if you're building an army of grassroots activists across the state, we're going to win this race. So I appreciate your coming. I appreciate your standing with us. We are in a short and narrow sprint. And I'll tell you, the poll numbers are closing. Just last week, a new poll was done that showed Dewhurst support dropping and our support surging. This race has closed 11 points in the last 2 months.
That's great.
3 months ago, David Dewhurst was at 41%. I was at 12%. This is an independent third-party pollster. Last week, the same pollster did a poll. His support fell from 41% to 36%. And our support surged from 12% to 18%. He fell 5 points, we rose 6 points, and we haven't spent a penny on television or radio ads. 100% of that, we've gone from 0% to 18% based on the work of the men and women in this room, based on the grassroots. Our campaign is surging, our message is resonating, and I am honored and proud to stand with the people. This race is ground zero between the Tea Party and the establishment. And you know what? We ain't done yet. Thank you, and God bless you.